It just kind of got to the point for me where I'm like, okay, why am I here again? Like, why am I still here? Sometimes I'm like, ugh, maybe I stayed like a little bit too long.
Never hesitate to call, 'cause I'm your sister and always for you. And don't know what I'd ever do without you from the beginning till the end. You've always been here right beside me, so I'll call you my best friend.
If you're watching this, I either have already left DC or it's official. I'm literally about to leave DC. So sadly, it's the end of this chapter, but not so sadly because I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm going to talk about all that. Before I get into all that, I just want to say shout out to Samantha, who has been holding this channel down. I've been dealing with all types of stuff and she has really been just showing y'all her new tech journey. I really loved her video where she showed us like all the rejection she got through her process for looking for a job in London and how that just didn't discourage her. Of course, I was like paying attention in real time. You know, I was going through it with her in real time when she was doing the job search, but it was really cool to see it, like see how she showed us that, you know, on the channel. So shout out to her. Thank you, girl. And yeah, okay, let's get into this video. If you're new here, I moved to DC from New York in 2021. So I've been in DC for 5.5 years. I lived in New York before that for almost 5 years. So between DC and New York, it's been like almost a decade. Even though in New York, technically, I wasn't there the whole time because like we studied abroad and did all this stuff. But you know, just to keep it simple, I was in New York for 4.5 years and then I decided to move to DC during the pandemic, moved in 2021. I moved to DC because one, I love New Yorkers and I love my experience in New York in terms of like just how much I grew personally. Like I have never been that much out of my comfort zone before, but I couldn't really say I liked the city. So I was like, you know what? It's the pandemic. I'm working remotely. I'm ready to leave. You know, where do I want to move to? And DC was one of those places where I feel like if I was on my deathbed and I never lived there, I'd be like, man, I'm always going to wonder what it would have been like to live there. It was just like one of those cities for me. I knew a lot of people that lived there, so I would visit a lot, and I always loved to visit. I spent half of my summer there in 2021. I split my summer position between New York and DC. Well, technically I was living in Maryland, but I was commuting into DC, and that was like such a good experience. I loved it. I love the vibes. I really liked all the parks in DC. I remember that. I don't know why that stands out to me about that summer, but I just remember being like, oh, DC is so green. There's all these parks everywhere, and like really loving that. And I like the location, how it's like you can get to Philly, you can get to New York. It's only an hour flight from Atlanta. It's an easy drive down to North Carolina. I also really liked that it felt like a good in between slow and fast. Like I'm originally from Houston. You know, Houston's kind of like one of those slow cities. New York obviously is like hustle and bustle. It's kind of like the things I like about both. It has both. DC is easy to get around. It's a very walkable city. You can also take public transportation. You can also drive everywhere. Like I really, really like that. I like that though at the same time. I didn't feel like I was gonna feel like cramped all the time. I always felt crammed in New York, so I was looking forward to like not feeling like that. And so yeah, I just felt like it was a really happy medium between two cities that I liked. I also really like that DC is one of those cities where people just visit. Like people are in DC for different reasons. Maybe they have a conference there. Maybe they have work to do, or it's just a place people visit a lot. And that's something I loved about New York. I love when people hit me up and be like, girl, I'm going to be in New York this weekend for this, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to see you. Like DC also has those vibes. So all in all, I was just like, cool, like this is where I want to move to. And when I moved to DC, the things I liked about it blossomed even more. Like there were so many things I didn't even know before I got there. Like I didn't realize there were so many free things to do. Like I was like, oh, going to the museum, free. Going to art gallery, free. Going to events, free. You just gotta like register or something. But a lot of the things to do there are free, and they're gonna make up for it with the drink prices. But it's just easy to like go out, have fun, and like things not to like cost $1 million. I remember when I was in New York, I used to always complain like going outside to breathe costs $20 in New York. And I never felt that way in DC, which was really cool. Also didn't realize there were so many like festivals like A Street Fest and Porch Fest. And there's always like something like that going on, which is cool. Even in terms of like outdoorsy stuff, like there's so many hiking trails throughout the DMV. Virginia has some of the most beautiful trails. I used to go to Great Falls a lot. Also really liked getting to know like, I don't want to say real DC, but like getting to know people who are from there. Like I have a friend who he's from there. He lived there. So like through him, I got to see like, you know, a different side of DC, like not the DC you're going to see with like the transplant experience. Also joining Walla helped for that. So I met a lot of DC artists. Shout out to Head Rock, mayor of DC hip hop. He introduced me to a lot of people from DC. He's from DC. He's lived there for decades. So he tells me a lot about like how it was before versus how it is now and things like that. I also take dance classes throughout the DMV with girls who are from the DMV. So that was another way that I really felt like I got to like, you know, kind of burst that bubble, like really feel like I was really getting to know the area for real. And I used to go to these study groups called the Asada Shakur Study Group in Southeast DC. And that's where I met a lot of people from like just different wards. And we would talk about just like things that are affecting DC, things affecting DC youth. That was another way that I really felt like I got to know people like from the area. So that was one of my goals. When I moved to DC, I was like, I really want to feel like I got to know people in the area, and I definitely did. A lot of things also just like blossomed for me here, like professionally. Like that's when I started doing like a lot of my public speaking stuff. Being on DC radio was a big moment for me. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like being on a podcast on DC radio. That was earlier this year. What else? I turned 30 while I lived in DC, so I threw like a mansion party in Potomac. That was pretty fun. And when I first moved out here, I would like have pre-games and I would have people over at like the apartment rooftop pool and stuff like that. So I just feel like I'm happy. Like I came, I saw, I conquered. Like I felt good about the experience that I had here. Of course, there's always those things that you don't like about living somewhere. And I definitely had my fair share of those. One thing that I didn't like. Okay. So like I said, I moved to DC because I like the vibes. I just like, it was one of those places I wanted to live. And one thing about me is when I want to move somewhere, I make that decision first and then I kind of like piece together all the details after. I always kind of feel like as long as I'm in a big city, I can make my career work. Like it's just a matter of, is it going to be more effort or less effort? So for example, when I moved to DC, like obviously it might not be obvious, but DC is not a very popular city for transactional lawyers. Like a lot of the work in DC is very different from that. So it takes more effort to find like transactional work in DC, especially the kind of work I was doing with like tech companies and startups and venture capital. When you think of that, you don't think of DC, you think of like California or somewhere, but I found it in DC. It just probably like took longer than it would have otherwise. Even now that I'm in media entertainment, plenty of other cities that probably would have been a lot easier for me to find a job in that area, especially when it comes to music. Like when you think of music, you probably think of like Nashville and Atlanta and Austin and like maybe LA and New York, but you don't necessarily think of DC first. But it just takes more effort to like find things in those industries. And like that's kind of how I always think about it. Like, okay, it'll be more effort, it'll be less effort here, but like it doesn't really drive my decisions. It didn't take me long to realize that that is very unusual in DC. A lot of people move to DC for work or for school, and not just any kind of work in any kind of industry. Like DC is really heavy on legislative work and regulatory work and litigation and government clearance jobs, you know, jobs like that, jobs that are very like kind of like more rigid, I would say. I don't know how else to describe them. And I feel like when you have a hub of people like that, and of course this is a general statement, so don't come for me. But when you have a city that's attracting like a hub of people like that, that's like coming for work and coming for a very specific kind of work, I feel like it creates this personality in the area that's just like very different. Like I feel like a lot of people in DC are not just type A, they're like type A. And I used to be more type A than I am now, but I have never been so type A. First of all, a lot of my type A-ness used to be around like school. But I've never been so type A to where like I need to pre-plan just like pulling up on somebody. Like that doesn't have to be pre-planned. Let me give you an example. So I spent a lot of time, I'm from Houston, spent a lot of time in Austin, I have family in Austin too, family and friends in Austin. Last year, I spent like a long time in Austin. I was there for like over a month. My friend hits me up. She's like, hey girl, I want to see you today. Like, what are you doing today? I'm like, oh, I'm like working and I'm going to be at the nail salon. She's like, cool. Send me the name of the nail salon you're going to be at. I'm going to come after work. Great. That simple. Send her the name of the nail salon. She pulls us to the nail salon. We're chit-chatting while I'm getting my nails done. She decides she wants to get her toes done. Cool. She gets her toes done. Afterwards, I'm like, you know what? I haven't seen your husband in a minute. Like, I'm going to come to your house. I come say hi to him. Go back with her to her house, chill with them for like an hour, and I go home. Like, Y'all, it could be that easy. It could be that easy. Like, people in DC are not spontaneous at all. If it's not pre-planned to a T, if there's not an agenda, they're not trying to, that's just not how people move. That's not how people move at all. So that's something I never really liked, if I'm being honest. I was like, oh my goodness, like, come on, y'all, come on. I used to like want to shake people because of that. Another thing about that personality type is I do think like there tends to be a lot of conventional thinkers, I guess you could say. I was talking to someone a few months ago. He's not someone like I talk to a lot, but we were on the phone and he was like, I love when we like have conversations and find time to talk because I feel like you're such an original thinker. And I was like, wow, I really liked that description of me. It's not something I'd heard anyone say about me before. People usually say like free thinker. Like my cousin will be like, when she doesn't agree with something I'm saying, she'd be like, oh, whatever, I forgot you're a free thinker. But I think I like original thinker better. I think that is probably a better description. And I do feel like that was like kind of an incompatibility for me in DC. I would also say that personality type that I'm talking about that's attracted, like tends to be maybe more like one-dimensional thinkers. And I'm going to give an example of that as well. One thing I loved about my apartment building was that they were always having events. So this day, it's like a Thursday night. There's a game night. I'm up there, everybody's chilling, everybody's talking. And we get on the topic of finding your people in a city, like what it's like to move to a city and find your people. So I was telling him about an event I went to called Creative Social and how I loved it. Out of everything I've been to in DC, I think that was probably like one of my favorite things I went to. It was really cool. Like I love the vibe that they created. It was really easy to talk to people and just like talking to people, sharing my interests, sharing this, sharing that. I just felt like everybody just got me. I don't know if it makes sense, but I just felt like everybody was like, oh yeah, of course. At that point, I lived in DC for a while, so I was used to like having to over-explain myself. Wasn't no over-explaining going on. Like people were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or like people were finishing my sentences for me and they would be correct. I'd be like, ooh, like it just felt really good to be there. It felt really good to meet a lot of like-minded people or whatever. And so I'm telling them about the event. I'm telling them about like just like how much I loved it. And I kind of wish they would have kept having more. I think they wanted to, but for some reason or another, like they never had any more of those creative socials. But either way, I'm telling them about this at this game night and a woman's there and she's like, wait, I'm so confused. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're a lawyer. There's so many lawyers in DC. Like, what do you mean about like trying to find your people? Which I thought was a very interesting way of looking at who your people are. Recently, one of my cousins, very close cousin of mine, very close family member of mine, he needed help with something work related. And until I helped him with that situation, I could not tell you what he did for work. Like, I knew he had a job, of course, but like it never came up. It was never like super important. And that's a close family member of mine. Like even the girls that I mentioned who I take dance classes with throughout the DMV, I can't tell you what half of them do for work. Like I know one of them is a student. I know their work schedules because they'll be in the group chat like, oh, I can't make that class. I can make this class. Like, but I don't know what they do for work. It's so funny because it's been like 2 years. And one girl, like maybe a few months ago, she was like, you're always posting all this cool stuff on Instagram. Like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm a media entertainment lawyer and blah, blah, blah. Before that, she know what I did. And like, it's not we're keeping it from each other. It's just, it's not the most important thing about why we're connecting. One of the art boards that I'm on, same thing. Like, I know that everyone's interested in art. I know that like some people on the board are visual artists. I know that everybody cares about this and that. I can't tell you what half of them do. Like, I know what some of them do. I don't know what half of them do. Like, and I would consider all these people that I'm describing like my kind of people. So I just felt like that was a very narrow way of viewing who your people are, just like seeing it through a profession. I do feel like it was a very like stereotypical DC way to think. I don't know. I think when you think that narrowly or when you see people that narrowly, it makes it hard for you to fully see them. Like that's just, my opinion. So that's one thing I also didn't really like. I rewatched a video I made. Samantha and I made this video 6 months after moving to DC, and we were comparing DC to New York. And I rewatched it right before I started shooting this video because I was like, you know what? Let me see what I thought back then, and let me see if I still think those things now. 95% of what I said, I still agree with. I'm like, even at the 6 month mark, 5.5 year mark, I still agree with a lot of those things that I said. But there are a couple things that I would reword now. One of those things was I was joking. I was making a joke. But at the end of the video, I'm like, if you're thinking about moving to DC, move to DC. I don't like to give blanket advice. One of my friends was thinking about moving to DC a couple years ago. Love her to death. She's such a butterfly. Like, she's like a free spirit butterfly. That's how I would describe her. And I was like, girl, I don't know if I would recommend it for you. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if I'd recommend it for you. Now, on the other hand, a few months ago, someone hit me up, a friend of a friend. She was like, you know, she think I'm moving to DC, and we were talking, and like, just based on what she was sharing with me and like what I was telling her about my experiences, I was like, I actually think you would love it. So of course it's always by a case basis. It depends on who you are. But I watched that back and I just kind of laughed at that. Another thing I said in that video is, I said one thing that I liked about DC is that I have more friends in DC and I have more of a social life in DC. And I think that I definitely know a lot more people in DC than I did in New York. And because of that, I had more of a social life in DC in terms of like, this person's doing this and this person's having that and this person's having this. I'm always going to all these different things and stuff like that. I would say though that my social life in DC was much more like touch and go, like much more touch and go, a lot of like curated experiences, a lot of very underlying like corporate professional tones to everything is like how, that's the best way I could describe it. Like things were very like corporate coded a lot. I'm sorry, y'all. It's always, my camera's always dying. I really need to get a new one. I need to invest in a new camera. That is something I'm gonna do later this year. But what was I saying? Overall, like I really did enjoy my time in DC. If I had to summarize like why I'm leaving, I would say, as a person who like kind of thinks creatively, as someone who, just my overall approach to life in general, I just don't really feel like DC was a place where I was being seen. And for me, like if I'm somewhere where, okay, I'm not being like seen by the people for real. Okay, cool. But at least like this is somewhere where it's great for my career. But DC is not necessarily amazing for media entertainment work. I mean, it's here, but it's not like, you know, somewhere where like that's super thriving. So it's like, okay, cool. Maybe this isn't a place where I'm like that seen. It's not great for my career. At least my family's here. My family's not in DC. So it just kind of got to the point for me where I'm like, okay, why am I here again? Like, why am I still here? So I know once I start feeling like that, it's time for me to go. Last year, I spent so much time away from DC. I was like, you know, just all over the place, and I did a road trip and all this type of stuff. And I feel like that was part of why I spent a lot of time the past year, like in Baltimore, sorry. They get on me about how I say Baltimore. They're always like, as soon as I say Baltimore, they're like, oh, you're not from here. Baltimore, my bad. Spent a lot of time in Baltimore. My last like year-ish in DC, which like I really loved. Everything I'm talking about, everything I just described, none of that applies there. Baltimore is really cool. I went to this big writing conference that they had there earlier this year. And like I loved it. It's like meetups there. So I really like Baltimore. One thing I forgot to say about DC too, that like I didn't really like is, I think out of everywhere I've lived, everywhere, like abroad, here, everywhere I've ever lived or visited and everything, I think that DC is probably the most individualistic. And I think that's like becoming a thing everywhere. But I do feel like it feels especially individualistic. I'm not like completely sure why I felt that and have felt that for the past like few years. So yeah, I'm really excited to leave. I would love for y'all to guess where I'm going. I feel like, well, I'm not gonna say any hints, but I would love for y'all to comment down below and guess like the city that I'm moving to, where I'm leaving to. But I've had a great experience in DC. I know I'm like saying like the things I didn't like, but overall, like I really did like it. I'm happy I moved here. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I stayed like a little bit too long, but I don't think so, because there were a lot of things that happened for me in DC this year that I don't think would have happened last year or the year before. I feel like it was like they were building blocks to like things that I had been working on. So that is it for this video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to subscribe, y'all. We are almost at 20,000. Like we are right there. We are touching 20,000. So please subscribe if you haven't already. If you're someone who just watches our videos when they pop up, but you've never really felt the need to subscribe, please change that practice today. Please hit subscribe so we can hit 20,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. And that's it for me, y'all. I will see y'all next time. Bye.